But here this leads to the second concern that I wanted to raise, and that is with the nature of links themselves. It just kind of depends what you mean by a transitional form or a transitional link. And there are actually two ways of looking at it. Now I'm going to use a kind of a highway illustration here to clarify for you, and it just gets you thinking about this. I can get from the 405 southbound to the 55 westbound right here in Costa Mesa by a link. There is a transition. It's a little piece of road that allows me to get off of one and onto the other. Such the 405 and the 55 at this juncture are very close to each other, and I can follow that transition. And by the way, it's very obvious to see that one leads to the other, even if you were up in the air and you were looking down and you could see these pieces, and even if it turns out that let's say you had some cloud cover and you couldn't see every single line of pavement, it's very easy to see this one flowing into the other, okay? And when I think of transitional forms, I'm thinking about those kinds of links. You have a reptile that is supposed to become a bird over a period of time, and it seems to me that transitional forms should be evident that kind of show this transition from one to the other, almost like time-lapse photography. And if you have a whole bunch of those things and you see each little change in evidence, one linking the other together in a fairly close union, then it seems to me you'd be justified in saying, well, one transitions into the other, okay? Now, this is what evolution doesn't have, by the way. They don't have those close links. They think of transitions in a different way. And now I want you to, back to your Google map here of Southern California, I want you to back way out until you see coast to coast. Then what I want you to do is imagine virtually all of those highways being wiped out except for little bitty specks, lengths of them at different parts of the country. So you might have a chunk that's a couple hundred yards wide here, long, and then 500 miles later you got another chunk that's another 100, 200, 300 yards. Maybe you might have one that's a half mile long. Maybe you have one that's only, a couple of feet long. Now here's the deal. From an evolutionary perspective, you could have chunks wildly separated from each other, chunks of highway, and as long as they are in between each other and going in the right direction, they can be considered transitional forms. So, as long as one section in West Texas one section of highway, short, 100 yards, 200 yards, as long as it falls between a length of highway in central New Mexico and one in southern Arkansas, and all the sections run roughly in the same direction, this could be considered a genuine transition, a part of the pathway from one to the other. Now, I hope you can see immediately the problem with this. There are hundreds and even thousands of miles separating these two chunks of highway, but since they are kind of in the right order and they are kind of pointing in the same way, the assumption is made that they must be on the same route. Now, here's the liability, or here's the trick, I should say. The problem with the map illustration is we happen to know that all roads connect with each other because we know that's the way roads work. And so even if we couldn't see all of the map, we know that somewhere there must be a connection. And this, of course, is exactly what the evolutionists presume. We already know all the roads connect. That is, we already know that the Darwinian model, the blind watchmaker thesis, is in fact true, and therefore all of these critters have some kind of relationship to each other. We're just trying to figure out what that relationship is more precisely. That's the question of the day. Is it justified to presume what you're trying to prove and then to put the evidence in the order that fits your model or not? What if you're not talking about the continental United States? What if you're talking about something that's more like Hawaii, which is a cluster of islands? There, all the roads aren't connected. Some are, and then they end at the beach. And then in the next little island that's part of the archipelago, whatever, a new system begins, and it's self-contained. Maybe that's the way it really looks. I should say maybe that's the way it really is. And so the problem with these transitions is the transitional forms are presumed to be transitional simply because they fit the model, even though there's no proximate connectors. You can't see the development. In fact, these fossil items show up abruptly in the fossil record. They're all highly developed and totally adequately, shall I say, designed for the use of all those parts you see. And this suggests that possibly they did not develop one from the other, and that the best evidence for such development is in the imagination and the presuppositions of the scientists involved.